India has long been pushing to grow its semiconductor industries. Now, how far have we come? To talk more on this, I'm joined by Krishna Bodanapu, who is the Executive Vice Chairman and MD at Cyient. Thank you for joining us in business today. And congratulations on the new subsidy which is focused on semiconductors. I want to know that how big is the semiconductor market in India and globally? Like, what are the numbers?
So the semiconductor market is a fairly significant market both in India and globally. As you can imagine, as more and more systems, as more and more things that we use become intelligent, the chip or the semiconductor is the basis of that intelligence. That starts with even some mundane things like coffee machines and vacuum cleaners to, of course, the more complicated things like computers, data centers, etc. So the use of semiconductors is growing dramatically across all industries and across many functions and systems and things that we use. Today, the semiconductor industry globally, and this is only the chip and the semiconductor, is estimated to be about $600 billion. And that will go to about $2 trillion in the next 10 years or so, in the next 7 years or so. Now, in India, the market is a little bit smaller, obviously. It's about a $200 billion market or so that will also grow quite in the same proportion in the next 7 years. But having said that, I think we also have to look at where does the semiconductor go, which is into the electronics and the electronic manufacturing. Electronic manufacturing in India is growing in a pretty significant manner, and we see that business will grow to about a $500 billion industry in the next 10 years.
And what's the rationale on having a separate subsidy for this?
The reason why we have a separate subsidiary is because the economics of the semiconductor and the chip business are a little bit different than what a technology services business's economics would look like. For example, we would invest upfront in engineering, upfront in IP creation. We would have to invest a little bit upfront in capex because there's a lot of materials, etc., that go into designing, prototyping, testing a chip. To make sure that we protect the economics and protect our shareholders' interests in Cyient Limited, we've carved it out as a separate subsidiary because we can capitalize it accordingly. We can make sure that it has its own economics, its own leadership team, and that way we can measure the progress without necessarily damaging the economics of Cyient Limited. This has worked out very well for us in the manufacturing business, the electronic manufacturing business, which is a company called Cyient DLM Limited. And we want to replicate a similar model because the economics are different, yet it requires its own growth and its own capital, and we are able to provide that capital in this model.
So, who are the clients which you will be servicing? Because you also talked about data centers and the growing need of these chips which would be used.
The clients would be across the spectrum. There would be from various industrial type of applications. We service a lot of automotive customers, industrial automation customers, and of course some of the data center operators. Again, these are the operators, not necessarily the chip companies. So these are people who create data centers, who create servers for the data centers. So what we're very excited about is we've picked a few areas that we want to focus on, such as power. As you can imagine, power management is becoming more and more important across various industries. So we've picked certain horizontals and we'll work with a set of customers across those horizontals. When I say horizontals, I mean capabilities like power.
And what sort of growth do you expect in the next, say, 5 years? What are the numbers which you're looking at?
I think the business will grow quite significantly. I think I would be very disappointed, honestly, if it doesn't grow exponentially in the next 5 years. Having said that, I think it's perhaps a little bit premature to talk about absolute numbers, but I strongly believe that this business has the opportunity to grow exponentially in the next 5 years.
And, what sort of funding are you looking at? How do you plan to finance the business?
So to start with, the Cyient board has authorized up to $100 million of financing from Cyient. This is through the various accruals of cash reserves that we have. Internal accruals, exactly. We've also, the board has also authorized us to look at an external fundraise from a financial investor. These are the two avenues that we immediately have at our disposal. And I believe that these two avenues will be enough to get us to about a 3 to 5 year runway before we have to do something very different.
IPO on your mind anytime, or like maybe after some Yes.
I think it's a bit too premature to think about that. I think right now our focus is really to utilize this opportunity, because I strongly believe this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, because of how semiconductors are being used, geopolitics, of course, where India stands in the whole equation. So I think our intent is really to grow the business before we think anything else.
Also, lastly, I want to know that how ready do you feel is India to take on the semiconductor market? Because our government is also, they really want the core intellectual properties to really pick up in India, apart from the logistics which we are seeing with other companies. So, what is your view on that?
I think India is a really good market for semiconductors, and for two reasons, right? One is today, if you look at the global design capability for chips, about 20% of it is in India. Much of it for foreign companies, but about 20% of it is in India. So, from a capability perspective, I think we're quite ready. From a market perspective, also, I think we're evolving. There's a lot of things that are happening in India. For example, the deployment of smart meters and smart grids. They will require a lot of chips in various places, from home electricity to, of course, to the generation points. The prevalence of EVs, especially around two-wheelers and three-wheelers, which is, again, a very unique market in India, right? I mean, if you look at a lot of the chips that are created for electric vehicles, they're created for four-wheelers in the Western world. But we need our own unique set of chips at a unique set of price points, and so on and so forth. I think just the use of electronics is increasing dramatically. And also, to what the Honorable Commerce Minister said the other day, I think it is time for us to not just focus on the consumer side of startups, the consumer side of the economy, but also the deep technology side of the economy. I think India has the capability and ability. I think it's really for companies like us then to make the investments, because it will take a bit of investment. It is a longer term play, but I think we're really ready for that play, both from a supply perspective, that is, the market has the talent, and also from a demand perspective, that market will consume these chips. And also from an ambition perspective, I think, again, what the minister said struck a chord with me, because I think there's a lot of good stuff that happens on the consumer side. Now we need to really step up the game onto the deep tech side.
How far is the talent part of, because a lot of technological businesses will be propelled by a good talent. So, how do you think India fares in that? And, do you feel that something can be done on that respect?
Absolutely. I think we have some of the best talent when it comes to electrical engineering, semiconductor, VLSI. And I think it's just a matter of hopefully companies like us coming together and giving that talent not just the opportunity to work for global companies, but to work for us at a global scale. And this is really the intent behind Cyient Semiconductor, is to leverage that talent in India and also globally, because I think there's some very, very good talent that we have in the business globally. Our intent is to really use this talent to address a global need. And I think the Indian talent is as good as anybody else across the world. And like I said, 20% plus of the chip designers in the world are Indians or based in India.
Thank you for those insights. Thank you for speaking to Business Today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.